Today, let's step back in time. We're going to the brand new community of Medina. But we're not going to look at its walls or its defenses. No, we're going to explore the spiritual fortress that was being built inside the hearts of its people. We're going to see how a foundation of, well, simplicity became its greatest strength.
And this really brings us to a question that sits at the very heart of this story. How do you measure the true strength of a leader? I mean, is it in their wealth, their power, the palaces they build? Or is it found somewhere else entirely?
You see, in those early days in Medina, the community's real strength wasn't in money or assets. It was woven together from bonds of faith and just mutual respect. For example, when the Prophet, peace and blessings be upon him, married Hafsah, the daughter of his dear friend Umar, it was this profound gesture that strengthened the whole social fabric of this new society. But there was another marriage that would define its spiritual core even more deeply.
This whole idea is just perfectly captured in the marriage of two of the most beloved people in that community. Alee ibn Abi Talib, the Prophet's cousin, and Faatimah, his youngest daughter. Their story, their union, it's a masterclass in the values we're talking about today.
So Alee, who grew up right there in the Prophet's own home, was a man of incredible courage, but he had very little money. People encouraged him, so he went to ask for Faatimah's hand. But when he sat in front of the Prophet, he was so filled with awe he couldn't say a word. The Prophet, seeing this, gently asked him, "What has brought you here?"
So when the topic of marriage finally came up, the Prophet asked a really practical question. He said, "And do you have anything with which you can make her lawful for you? Basically, what do you have for a dowry?" Ali's answer said it all. He had nothing. Well, except for a simple suit of armor.
That suit of armor was sold for about 400 dirhams. I mean, just pause and think about the humility of that moment. This was the entire dowry for the daughter of the leader of the whole community. It wasn't about being flashy or extravagant. It was all about sincerity and simplicity.
But their life together didn't just magically get easier after they got married. Actually, this is where their story truly begins, in the tough reality of daily hardship, a life of constant work, not comfort. Alee would later talk about the physical toll of his work. His job was to draw and carry water, which is just this relentless, back-breaking task. He said, "By Allah, I have constantly carried water to the degree that I now feel pain in my chest." Wow, you can almost feel the physical strain in those words. And Faatimah, she was right there with him, facing a similar struggle. She was the one who had to grind the grain by hand day after day. She described the result. "I've constantly worked at grinding until my hands have become coarse and the skin on them has become weak."
The depth of their poverty was just woven into every little detail of their life. Their living conditions were incredibly simple. Get this, their bed cover was so small that if they pulled it over their heads, their feet would be exposed. And if they covered their feet, their heads were left out in the cold. Eventually, the physical strain just became too much to bear. And they heard that some prisoners of war had been brought to Medina, which meant that servants were available. So worn out, they decided to go to the Prophet, her father, and ask for some help. And this moment, it sets up a really crucial choice. And here's the dilemma he faced. On one side, you have the very real, legitimate need and exhaustion of his own beloved daughter and son-in-law, but on the other side, you have the needs of the poorest members of the community, the people of As-Sufa, who were homeless Muslims living right there in the mosque. His response was decisive, and it established this profound principle of what leadership really is. He told them, "By Allah, I will not give you while the stomachs of the people of Sufa to remain empty." He was going to sell the slaves and use that money to feed the hungry. The most vulnerable people in the community had to come first, period. But he didn't just send them away with nothing. Later that evening, he went to visit them in their humble little home. So they didn't get the worldly help they'd asked for, but he came to give them something he believed was far, far greater, a treasure for the soul. As they were lying there under that short blanket, he sat down with them and made this incredible offer. He asked, "Shall I not inform you about that which is better for you than what you asked me for?" He was about to replace their request for physical help with a tool for spiritual strength. And this was the gift. He taught them that when they went to bed, they should glorify God 33 times, praise Him 33 times, and then magnify Him 34 times. This simple act of remembrance, which is now known as the tasbih of Faatimah, was presented as something so much more valuable than any servant could ever be. Now, this teaching ties directly into a core principle from the Quran, laid out perfectly in this verse from Surah Taha.
It's a warning against longing for the splendor of worldly life, reminding all of us that the provision of your Lord is better and more enduring. The prophet was giving them that better provision. He was training them to find strength not in worldly comfort, but in their connection to God.
And this lesson, it wasn't just some temporary comfort for a difficult time. No, this was a kind of deep spiritual training that would go on to shape Ali's character for the rest of his life. And it would bear fruit in the most remarkable ways.
The results of this training became so clear years later. When Ali became the caliph, the leader of the entire Muslim nation, he had access to unbelievable wealth. And yet, he lived with that exact same profound simplicity. He wore simple, short clothes and ate coarse food, because he developed this deep aversion to the temptations of the world. And that tesbih, he later said, ever since he taught them to me, I never abandoned them. Someone asked him, not even on the night of the fierce battle of Siffin? And he replied, no, not even on the night of Siffin.
So, we end right back where we started, with this idea of strength. This story tells us that true strength, the kind that can endure any hardship, that resists corruption, and that leads with integrity, it isn't forged in comfort. It's forged by choosing a provision that truly lasts. Which of course leaves us with a final thought to reflect on. What is the provision that is truly better and more enduring in our own lives?